Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my May 2021 page 112 tag. The page 112 tag was started by Sean the Book Maniac, based off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised a long list, I believe, of fiction based solely on the content of page 112 of novels. So you don't have any of the context of the story from before, and you have to only go by the strength of the writing. And I have been using this tag for the last year or so to slowly curtail my physical unread bookshelves. I have a list of all of my unread titles in this handy dandy Cats and Books mug, and each month I pull out 3 titles. And I read page 112 from each of them, and then I pick which of the books I will add to this month's TBR. Of course, the goal of this exercise is to pick the best written page 112, although sometimes I let other considerations come into play. And if you've been watching some of my recent videos, you know that I already have a lot of reading on my list this month in terms of page count. So I might be going ahead and just choosing the shortest book or something like that. I'm really hoping just to get 3 well-written short books this month, but we'll have to see. And also, I should say, the titles in here are my purchases from 2020 and before. So there's already still a lot in here. So, I'm hoping for some earlier ones, because that's always fun to finally get them off the list, but we'll see how it goes. Starting with book number 1. Okay, and yeah. The Museum of Extraordinary Things by Alice Hoffman. That is like right behind me. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and also this is a book that I believe I've had in my collection for a few years now, ever since I've read her book, The Dove Keepers. Well, that's when I decided I wanted to read more of her historical fiction, and I think a little while later I found this at my library bookstore. So I'm excited because this is more Jewish historical fiction, very different from The Dove Keepers, I believe. The Dove Keepers took place in Masada in sort of post-biblical times, and this one will be 20th or 19th century Coney Island. So, but we'll see how it goes. Ta-da! Okay, and now we'll go for book number 2, trying to just find a new one. I mean, I'm trying to, mix them up a little, hopefully diversity here. Cadillac, Oklahoma by Louise Farmer Smith. Okay, I think we are back to 2020. 2020, I'm pretty sure I got this book as. It's one of my small press books, actually. This small press actually was so small it recently went out of business, but this was a short story collection that they published that looked interesting to me. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe short stories would be good for, this month. You can kind of get through a short story more quickly, maybe? I don't know. Let's hope. Okay, and finally we have number 3. Ooh, nope, that's 2. So these stick together so easily in here, but here we go, just 1 now. Oh, The Best of All Possible Worlds by Karen Lord. This is a book I picked up a few years ago at the Gaithersburg Book Festival, which would be taking place in person around this time this year, if it wasn't for COVID. So this has definitely been on my shelves for a few years. And it's science fiction. I'm always excited when I get some science fiction in this, this tag. I believe I heard about it through Elizabeth at Books and Pieces. It just sounded really interesting, so I put it on my to-read list, and then I found it, and now maybe I'll finally be getting to it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and grab my books, read page 112, come to a decision, but then I'll be reading it for you and explaining my thoughts. Okay, and I'm back to read aloud and discuss my page 112s. I feel like I've gone on quite a journey this month. Starting with Book 1, The Museum of Extraordinary Things by Alice Hoffman. It was all Commissioner Waldo and Chief Crocker could do to keep a rough sort of peace, one that seemed ready to explode on a daily basis. The fire was the only topic people could talk about, and there was little room for other news. If anything, the monster they were interested in was the city itself, torn apart by rage. Soon enough, bloody riots erupted on the avenues, and outraged workers gathered in meeting halls. The streets near the disaster had been washed with buckets of soapy water, yet no matter how often city workers might clean the pavements, there were red stains marking the cement. In between the paving stones, it was still possible to spy shimmering shards of bone. An investigation had begun, but the owners of the factory, who'd fled before the mourners could identify their dead, had yet to be arrested. The curtain that split the city in two, separating those who could escape to the rooftops from those who could not, had been torn open to reveal inequities long kept in the dark. People were furious to find that life was considered a treasure for some, but worth so little for others. A huge gathering of garment workers was arranged to take place at the Metropolitan Opera House on 34th Street, with hundreds of women taking the stage, insisting on better conditions for the half of the city that worked for the benefit of the other half that could calmly gaze at the damage around them through their windows, safe and protected from the mayhem on the streets and from the despair of those who tailored the clothes they wore. It might have been best to let go of the idea of creating a monster, but the professor was single-minded, convinced that, in brutal times, people longed more than ever for an escape from the harsh realities of their daily lives. Why else would the construction to spruce up Dreamland continue at such a fast pace? The renovation of the park would cost close to $1 million. The buildings, once starkly white, had been repainted in a riot color, and then the sentence goes on from there, but I feel like I'm going to stop because it's one of the long, rambling sentences that is indicative of part of this page 112 tag. There's a lot of long, rambling narrative. There's really no sense of dialogue or people who are introduced. It's more, reportage. That being said, it is incredibly propulsive reading, I thought. We come in on such a scene of devastation. I mean, what it sounds like to me is like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire or something to that effect, which touches upon, early 20th century inequality having to do with the way that factories are run and, the poor, being oppressed while the rich, are, able to be more safe. That's something that we're talking about in this page. And of course, that stuff, resonates to this day. Inequality in the public sphere is something that continues to resonate to this day. So yeah, I found it very engrossing, but at the same time, I could start thinking about the idea of, I want a person. But then when a person is introduced, this professor talking about a monster, it felt a little bit removed from what was going on. Like, I'm not sure what monster he was talking about. Earlier, there was the monster of the city, but he seemed to be talking about something else. And then there were some run-on sentences as well, so there's that. But, overall, I'm definitely interested in giving this a go. Next, I have Cadillac, Oklahoma, a short story collection by Louise Farmer Smith. And, well, there's a reason I'm kind of chuckling here, because this is page 112. I mean, this is one of the things about, short story collections, really. Unlike with the novel, you could get something really weird, and this was really weird. It's just, a final half page of a tiny sliver of life story, but I will read it anyway. I am tortured. My wife tells me I would be tortured if I lived in Boston and published in the Paris Review. It's true, but humiliation is my muse. This insult is like kindling. I will catch, flare, and warm the cheeks of Madam President of the Garden Club. One takes one's audience where one finds her. Herbert Ashcroft Wiley, Cadillac resident since 1990. So, okay, what I get from that is, this is a short story told by a resident of Cadillac, Oklahoma, who, signs it at the end. There's, not a lot here to latch on to, although that's a pretty funny line about, he's so, miserable and wants to be miserable that even, if he lived in New York and had, a huge publication on his back, a lot of prestige in the literary world, the Paris Review, he'd still be miserable. So that's nice. That's kind of funny. So hopefully that's the sort of thing we could continue to see in some of these other snippet of life stories, which I believe follow, various residents of the town. And finally, book 3 is the sci-fi, The Best of All Possible Worlds by Karen Lord. I looked at the monk, knowing but needing to hear him say it. He smiled and gestured at the pool. Walk on water, fly through treetops, farewell. Indiana Jones Holovid fans, eat your hearts out. We did not walk, we ran. Our feet struck the water firmly, gripped impossibly, and propelled us to the horizon at the pool's far edge. We hurtled into an element that should have destroyed us, high vaulted air with a breeze too light for the wingless to hope. And yet we soared. We swooped down from the narrow valley, following the line of the river as though it were an arrow to our destination. I was tempted to look back to see if there was a line of robed figures just beyond the edge of the pool, wafting us gently homeward, but I knew that this was just a silly cinematic image, possibly a memory from some ancient holovid. So I looked forward in wonder, seeing the kind of bird's-eye view of the landscape that even a shuttle can't give. Some people, of course, have to prove they can't be awed by anything. Telekinesis is a natural consequence of intensive psionic development, he remarked after a minute or so. Shut up! You're spoiling it! I screamed. I may have also shrieked, "Whee!" at some point. I admit nothing. However smooth our descent as we followed the water down, I began to realize something. I think we're going to get wet again. Ugh! But it was only to our knees, and the current was comparatively tame. As we slogged through to the nearest bank, heavy and earthbound once more, I heard the most beautiful sound, the chirp of my own missing calm, miraculously coming from Delkina's pocket. Okay, so I feel almost like I was pushed off the deep end with this one. Get it? Okay, all right, fine. But, you know, we're definitely in some sort of sci-fi future. We got holovids, we got shuttles, we got comms. It kind of feels like they're on some sort of close future water park game ride, based off of Indiana Jones, perhaps. You know, that part probably was more, you know, of a throwaway line, but it feels like it's a ride because it feels like they're having fun. It doesn't feel like something that, you know, they're doing to escape or something like that. I mean, otherwise I'm trying to think, why else would they be on this thing? And truly, I don't know, because I don't have the rest of the context of the story. So it feels like a ride because she's at least, or, well, I'm thinking it's a she, but our narrator is having a bunch of fun and is with a companion named He, who, you know, is more of a, you know, a dry spoil sort type, it seems, at least from this page. I'm liking this a little better on the reread than I did the first time because they really, you know, put you into the context of something that you can't fully understand, which is a negative, I think, of reading science fiction and fantasy for the page 112 tag, because if anything could benefit from world building, it's worlds that don't actually exist. So, you know, it's only fair that the authors get a chance to introduce us to their imaginary playgrounds, as it were. So, yeah, I do find it interesting. I don't necessarily think it was the strongest page. Even some of the language, like, you know, the screaming and the ogs, there's like a tint of juvenilia to that, you know, to be, you know, a snob about it. But still, like all of these books, I guess I'm still interested. But that being said, I came to this tag with a stated purpose to choose the shortest book, or at least that was my hope. And so that's why I think I'm going to go for Cadillac, Oklahoma. Or part of the reason, let me justify it a little bit more. First of all, yes, it is the shortest page count and also, you know, the smallest pages, you know, in terms of the cut of the binding too. Second of all, I've been on a kick all this year of finally reading through the books I've acquired from small presses. And this was once published by a small press that's now out of business, so it fits the bill. And third of all, they're dashed off stories, so they should be easy to read through quickly. And, you know, frankly, yes, that's what I need this month. If I'm going to add a book to my TBR, you know, it can't be something that drains a lot of time from me, because I got a lot of drainage going on, you know, in my other reading projects. So there we go. Those are my excuses for picking this book for the page 112 tag this month. So that about covers it for me now. You can find Goodreads links for all 3 of these books listed down below, as well as a link to my last page 112 tag if you're interested in how this game has gone for me before, especially when I played it technically more to the rules of the game, which I promise I'm going to try to do again next month when I don't have the BookTube prize or anything. I'm going to, you know, privilege page 112 the most. I mean, that being said, I feel like these 2 page 112s were even anyway in their strengths and weaknesses, but maybe that's more excuses. Moving forward here, I tend to end these videos with a shout out to a booktuber's TBR game, because I feel like my page 112 tag is sort of in the vein of that. I'm trying to, add a little bit of spontaneity to my reading to make it more exciting and more fun. And there is a subset of booktubers who do monthly TBR games to sort of pick their TBRs on the fly as well. So this month I'm going to be highlighting A Star Reads, who is doing a game of Bookish Life, which is basically a completely revamped game of life board. It's like that really fun sort of 3D kind of game board. It's not just, the flat game. It also has like those little houses and so forth on it. But she's gone ahead and written new prompts that, are based on books for all of the different squares. And it all kind of goes on a journey from like childhood to old age, as it were. And even the prompts sort of follow that to a creative degree. And it's really fun to see her play. And she also makes room for a lot of diversity in her spins and the prompts that she gives herself. So it's really cool. And I will link to her down below. I will be back on this channel for my Friday Reads video coming up at the end of the week, so stay tuned. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.